I am of the firm belief that no food should be off limits. That's a really tough thing for people. They're like, what? What do you mean? I can have permission to have whatever I want? And it is true.
Why, in your opinion, diets often fail and why people struggle to adhere to them?
So dieting in and of itself, what it is it's a form of restriction. And usually what you'll do is you'll restrict your calories and or you'll restrict and cut out maybe an entire food group. Right now, it's all about, making carbs the devil and carbs are evil. And so when you do that, what you're doing is you're signaling to your body that you're not doing as well as you were doing before.
Dr. Supatra Tovar is a clinical psychologist and dietitian who specializes in understanding the relationship between your mind and food. She uses her different disciplines of her unique background to show clients how small modifications to daily habits can transform mindset and enhance relationships. What you'll hear next is our interview, where Dr. Tovar shares how she helps clients to improve their approach to food, the difficulties with modern day diet culture, and how to move away from restrictive dieting and instead enjoy your food. So let's get into it. Dr. Tovar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, James. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for taking the time to speak to me. You have a lot of experience in different areas, and there's a lot of ground that I would like to cover today. But before we do, though, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, of course. My name is Dr. Supatra Tovar, and I am a clinical psychologist, a registered dietitian, and a fitness expert. And I run a private psychological practice in Los Angeles, California. And I treat for eating disorders, disordered eating, trauma, anxiety, depression, everything essentially.
Okay, yeah, it spans quite a lot then. And your background in different areas, I suspect, just influences your practice and they all interlink, don't they?
Absolutely. Actually, out of my practice, the work that I was doing, especially with clients with eating disorders and disordered eating, I created an educational company called ANEW, which stands for Advanced Nutrition and Emotional Wellness. And currently we have our first online course. It's called Deprogram Diet Culture. And we are about to release a book under the same name, Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And that publishes in September. And it's based on the work that I've done with my clients and the system I've developed to help them formulate their relationship with themselves and food. And I've had really good success helping them navigate out of an eating disorder and into recovery. And it's just been amazing work. And I really want to share it with everybody.
Yeah, fantastic. And this is perfect because I'd love to talk to you about the sort of things which I have no doubt are in your book and all of your work, and I think we can tie that in because I'd like to speak about the psychology behind dieting, relationship with food, because it's so tough and there are so many people that struggle out there. Lots of things might kind of cause it, and there are so many different areas that it's kind of hard to know where to start. But someone like you who has this background is fantastic. So talking about diet culture and its effect on our mental health, what are some of the signs that someone might be struggling with these effects or with poor mental health secondary to diet culture?
Absolutely. I think primarily when you see somebody who is kind of overly concerned with weight or shape, someone who might diet excessively or often or all the time, you often see corresponding mental health difficulties like depression, a lot of anxiety. It affects how we think. Diet culture in and of itself is basically the pursuit of the thin ideal, this kind of idealized image, but it's also based off of weightism or fat shaming. Those two biases are what really drives it. So if you think about it, somebody who is afraid of being fat shamed or someone who has been fat shamed, that, can be the primary driver to try to find the, quick solution, the fast solution, which diet culture often, advertises and states that will happen if you go on this diet. And that kind of puts a person in like a perpetual cycle of shame often with weight loss and then weight regain, because diets don't work. They always fail, no matter what, unless you're absolutely strict in adhering to this restriction. But that often leads into the development of an eating disorder, whether it's anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, or binge eating disorder, or any kind of combination of the three, or even the newest one, not even yet in our DSM, which is orthorexia nervosa, which is kind of that pursuit of, clean, safe, pure foods, often to a person's distress or impairment.
Yeah, actually, that's something which is starting cropping up in triathlon as well, and endurance sports, because there is a real concern about only eating the quote unquote good foods and not wanting to eat any of the unhealthy foods, and which is just as, I guess, dangerous or difficult, which probably people don't even realize, do they?
Oh, no. I think, it's touted as this, kind of pure way to eat, this, very clean way. You hear clean eating used a lot. And so it has kind of what we would describe as like a health halo. Like if you were going to eat in this, vein, you will, keep yourself from all of these harms. You'll lose weight, all of these good moral qualities. You're going to be, reaching that thin ideal. And so people fall into that trap. And then whenever they veer outside of this type of eating, that's when the real distress happens. And people always veer outside of that. You can't go out to a restaurant without veering outside of it. So having such a strict prescription for your foods, that's what usually leads people to that distress.
Yeah. And you mentioned this, that diets typically fail, or they, depending on how that person approaches it and the negative cycles that people can get in. What are some of the features behind diets failing for people? And how can people approach this to have a more sustainable approach to dieting, weight loss, healthy eating, whatever it be?
Absolutely. So repeat your first question. I want to make sure that I say this correctly.
So first of all, I'd just like to know a bit more about why, in your opinion, diets often fail and why people struggle to adhere to them.
So dieting in and of itself, what it is it's a form of restriction. And usually what you'll do is you'll restrict your calories or you'll restrict and cut out maybe an entire food group. Right now, it's all about, making carbs the devil, and carbs are evil. And so when you do that, what you're doing is you're signaling to your body that you're not doing as well as you were doing before. You're actually in danger. You're kind of going into a starvation mode, and the body starts to record this. And what it does is it, amps up your hunger hormones. Specifically, ghrelin is one of them, but there's a whole bunch of other ones that are involved in appetite. And so your appetite goes up. And while you're fighting with your appetite and you're fighting with your body is continuously recording what you're losing, what you are not giving your body. If you look at most diets, they're like around 1,200 calories, which is really not enough to fuel a toddler. So of course your body is going to be wondering what the heck is going on. And if you look at it evolutionarily, it doesn't like this. It really wants to hold on. So what happens is it's recording how much fat and how much lean muscle you're losing. And that's what it's going to add on in the same proportions after your diet. It is also triggering what's called suppressed thermogenesis, which just means, thermogenesis is the burning off of your fat stores. And so when you're dieting, when you're restricting, the body actually tells its fat stores, hold on, we're not losing you. We might lose muscle and we might lose water because those have less caloric value to the body than fat does. And so it's holding on to the fat while you're losing muscle, usually in water. And then as soon as you go off the diet, it actually goes back to more normal thermogenesis. It's called adaptive thermogenesis, so that when you're done with the diet, your body actually starts to burn fat again. So it's totally counterproductive to diet. And so the way that I help my clients understand and implement a healthy way to return to, their most desired weight is to actually listen to your hunger and your fullness. Because when you do this, and when you honor when you're hungry, and when you are no longer hungry, that signals to your body, let's stay in thermogenesis. And so when you're actually cueing into your body and you're really listening to your body, you can also really discern whether or not your body likes what you're feeding it. And oftentimes you can tell, especially if you're eating a lot of junk foods. And I don't believe in good or bad foods, but when, people understand junk foods, it's the more highly processed food, the less healthy food. Your body actually tells you it doesn't like it. Your body will tell you, oh my gosh, that's too much salt, or that's a lot of sugar all at once, or I don't really like these ingredients. And your body tends to thrive a lot more when you eat more whole foods. So I help clients really cue into that and listen to how their body, what their body is saying and how it feels. And that can be their guide as opposed to a restrictive diet. So it actually opens up all sorts of food possibilities. And that is really freeing for my clients. They realize that they can actually lose weight just by honoring their hunger and fullness and by listening to what their body really wants to eat. And so it's like, food freedom for everyone. And that's what I want to teach people so that they can get off of this endless hamster wheel of dieting and then weight gain.
How difficult is that? And I say that because hunger cues, fullness cues are difficult. And I presume, like most things, especially the things which are worthwhile, this is not an overnight change. So how can you just go into a little bit of how you actually do that, how you help a client through understanding hunger cues? Because I'm sure this would be so useful for a lot of people, but it's not as simple as just saying kind of listen to when you're hungry or when you're full, because there's a lot of nuance to that.
Yes. I go into this in the book and in the course and with my clients. And I think it's a layered approach. What I usually do is I go into the physiology of why their dieting doesn't work, why this path will lead to weight gain. Once they really firmly grasp that, then they're very eager to learn a new way. So that I think is, it's kind of part motivational interviewing with them, but it's about becoming on board with the fact that, we've been fed this lie for many, many years. And the reasons why we fed the lie, they're very understandable, these biases that I've talked about. And then I have them go through a process where they examine their relationship with themselves and food. And we base that off of their childhood, because this is where we pick all of this stuff up. What was the kind of attachment that you had with your parents? What did they impart on you? Were they always dieting? Did they tell you to clean your plate no matter what? Did they, threaten to withhold dessert? What were the childhood factors that led to this relationship with food? And then we use a form of mindfulness cognitive behavioral therapy where we examine all of these thoughts and all of these ideas that they've had about themselves, and we examine them for veracity. And then what we do is we reformulate the thoughts based on, the actual evidence. Once we kind of go through that and they understand their relationship with food, then we can go into the body. And oftentimes people are completely dissociated from their body. They don't even remember what hunger feels like. Hunger is when your stomach is grumbling, when you're weak, when all you can think about is food, when you get hungry and angry at the same time. And I help them reconnect with those actual physiological feelings and signals and discern them from the more emotional signals. So if you think about like emotional eating or comfort eating, usually those cravings or that kind of hunger, and I put it in quotes, that hunger is driven by emotion. It usually comes on pretty fast, and it's usually devoid of those actual physical symptoms. So when they learn how to discern that, that's the key. And then I have them, really increase their self-awareness. That's really a big part of my practice, is having them really tune into their body and ask themselves before they're about to go in to have lunch, even if they may have had lunch at the same time every day their entire life. Are you actually hungry? Do you really actually desire food? Or is this the, regular time that you eat? And if it's not, Maybe you wait until you're actually feeling that physical hunger, and then you sit and be present with your food. So mindful eating is a huge part of it. I recommend people don't have distractions. I recommend that they turn off their cell phone and their TV, maybe just put music on and actually sit and be with their food. And what that does is it slows them down, and it actually helps them enjoy what they're eating as opposed to eating as fast as they can or in their car or on the run or whatever. And then gauge themselves. If they're eating slow enough, then their body's going to tell them at a certain point, okay, I think I'm actually really satisfied. And then stopping at that point, engaging your feelings again and seeing if you're actually, still physiologically hungry or if you can stop. And just by doing that, just by cueing into hunger and fullness, that's when usually people tend to veer away from disordered eating or their eating disorder. That's when they start to really kind of get that they can become their own best expert, that they can listen to their body as opposed to the, diet guru out there, or, whoever they're looking at on social media. And they can be the ones in charge of their health and their body.
Amazing. And do you think that this approach is more suited to people who have specifically either been diagnosed or have strong indicators of having disordered eating or being diagnosed with eating disorders? Or is this something really for the general population? And I suppose why I'm asking that is you have a heck of a lot of experience, and clearly what you do with working with people is not just a simple surface level approach. There is so much to it, and the people like you are going to be few and far between. And in terms of kind of having access to someone like you to really go through it, most people probably won't. And so I think for the average individual, being able to access that is difficult. And I guess probably part of the reason you've got your course and your book and is to be able to give more people access to that, which is fantastic. But I suppose I kind of am thinking with a safe, normal diet culture, if it wasn't so focused on specifically on kind of image or fast fixes, do you think there's a place for that for the people who have less in the way of disordered eating?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think that there's anyone who isn't influenced by diet culture. I really don't think I've ever met anyone who's just like, yeah, no, I never think about it. I think we are inundated with it. And I think it's whether or not we have that kind of levels of awareness to know that there's an actual problem. I think a lot of people really, have been conditioned to think that if they'd have a problem with their weight, it's either their fault. Now they're touting it as that it's obesity is a disease, which I understand and I have a lot of, compassion for as far as removing the medical stigma. But a lot of people think that they're powerless once they hear that they have a disease. And then, here comes medical intervention such as, bariatric surgery and these weight loss medications as the cure. So I think everyone has some form of influence from diet culture, and they really can stand to look at their relationship with food. And that is why I wrote the book and did the course, because I think I've known many people who have been frustrated with diets and dieting and weight loss. And so the book especially, but also the course, it's more in depth, really kind of helps guide you through all of those steps that I've talked about. And in addition to the ones I talked about beyond mindful eating, I teach lasting behavior change on top of that. So as soon as they can examine their childhood relationship with food and really understand the influences that have been troubling them, then I take them through the steps where they can actually reformulate the thoughts. It is, like you said, it's not easy. It's simple because of the way that you can examine them. It's not easy. You do have to practice, especially when you are reformulating new thoughts about yourself or incorporating new behaviors like mindful eating. But that doesn't mean that has to be, boring, hard, all of the bad things. The way that I actually have people reformulate their thoughts is I have them basically create mantras about themselves. So say that, one primary thought, and this is a really common thought for a lot of people, unfortunately, is I'm worthless. A lot of people think this. This is probably the most common cognitive distortion that I get in my practice, but I see it everywhere. And I have people really examine that, is that actually true? Or, did somebody tell you this from your past and then it was just reinforced over and over again in certain ways? If not, and most, everyone that I've worked with, that of course that's not true. Everybody's worthwhile and lovable and amazing. They then create the thought, I am lovable. And when you put it into a mantra is basically a form of meditation where you repeat a word or phrase over and over again to produce a calming, relaxing effect. And when I have people actually implement this in practice, it's not like I'm having them practice it all day, every day. That's completely, unrealistic. I have them create a very, very small and tiny behavior around this. And I have them attach it to something that they do normally. So say it's, hopefully everyone wakes up in the morning. As soon as you wake up in the morning, that's your behavioral cue to start your new mantra. So you can just imagine you just wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is you set your timer for 2 minutes and all you do is repeat this new mantra over and over again. I am lovable. I am lovable. I am lovable. I am lovable. Or whether it's I am loved. I am loved. Or it can be I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. When you do this, even just for 2 minutes, you're reconditioning your mind. You're actually creating new neural pathways in your brain for this new thought to take root and for the other thought to be extinguished. If you think about it, maybe you're 40 years old, you've said unlovable for, 30 of those years or something like that. Yeah, that's going to be your automatic thought. But when you actually repeat this thought over and over again and recondition it, it becomes your automatic thought, which is so powerful and so healing for people. So it's really about understanding where you got to where you are and then reformulating that thought and then finding the way to practice that thought. And it's amazing. It is a tiny behavior change, yes, but it is absolutely transformative. And I've seen every single one of my clients who's come to me, especially for eating disorder, but even disordered eating, go into recovery. And I think that that is pretty phenomenal because you hear all the time, oh, eating disorders are so hard to treat. This method actually works for people, whether you have a full-blown eating disorder or you just have some disordered eating behaviors.
What sort of time frame are we looking at? I know that is $1 million question. I'm sure it completely depends. But in terms of lasting change and reconditioning to the sort of extent that you've mentioned, how long would that take?
It really does depend on the person. It depends on how ingrained their habits are and how ingrained their thoughts are and how willing they are to really look at them and change them. You might have somebody who has a lot of resistance to it or, has a lot of influences around them that are, keeping them in this kind of behavior. So it really does depend on the person. But I would say in average, overall, maybe with my clients, a few months, maybe 4 to 5 to 6 months for these new thoughts, these new behaviors to take root. And I think that that's actually pretty normal. If you look at, behavior change in and of itself, a lot of people say, 30 days is the start of kind of where you would, adopt a new behavior. But really after 60 to 90 and beyond is when you really see it, taking root and sticking with you. So unlike a lot of the promises from diet culture, it is a slower process. Your weight loss too might be slower. You might, you might have been used to losing 2 pounds a week on the diet before, and maybe it's a half a pound a week. But what I have found with all of my clients, especially the ones who have wanted that quick weight loss, is that once they start to lose weight this way, they become really happy because there's no suffering involved. There's actually only, a reformulation of good, healthy, positive thoughts and behaviors that really help them. And so that's why I don't see many people ever. I've never seen any of my clients return to dieting after working on themselves like this. And that's sustainable. That's for life.
And I'm guessing that most people who come to you are already at that point of wanting change, and there's almost less. Would it be fair to say that there's less kind of convincing needed for them in terms of reprogramming, or is it just dependent on the person and how deeply rooted things are? Because I guess motivation is, and where someone is in that behavioral change cycle is a big factor.
Absolutely. I think the people that I tend to get in my practice are at their wits' end, usually, with dieting or really suffering from their behaviors. Maybe not so much. I don't necessarily have the people who might need to go into the hospital. I usually will get people after that, after they're coming out of the hospital or things like that. But they're definitely like, I want the answer. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think that they're very attracted by the fact that I have the psychology as well as the nutrition and fitness background to be able to help guide them in the beginning. I'm guiding them in the beginning, but what I'm teaching them as they go along, they're actually implementing on their own. And when you see, yes, you have to be motivated and willing to change. And at the point where you're like, okay, I really do see that dieting doesn't work for me. I just want another answer. And I don't want it to necessarily be a weight loss medication. There's a lot of people, and I don't fault them at all. I don't think poorly of them going on to these weight loss medications. But what I do find for most people that I know who've gone on them is that they're kind of, in a way, like a dead end street. You either have to take them forever, or, you go off of them and then you gain the weight again. So to me, it just feels and seems like just another diet, although I think a pretty dangerous one, because I see, the potential for people to be malnourished is so incredibly great on those medications because you just don't have desire to eat. So, I've known people who've eaten only like 800 calories a day. And that is very frightening to me because you are malnourished. You're not able to think straight. Your body then goes through all of these processes that are not good for you. So you have to be very careful when you're on those kind of medications. So people want to come to me as a natural solution where they won't have to do that, and they can still enjoy food and still be out in society and going to restaurants, but better able to listen to themselves.
Yeah, I have so many questions that I want to ask because you've said so many great things, and I mean, I think the medication side of things is fascinating. We should probably save it for another time, but it's something I struggle with as well because we get a lot of it in general practice, family medicine, with people who want to start it, and then it's this whole thing of do you, don't you. There's some emerging evidence that there might actually be some cardiovascular benefit being on them, and then you get into a very sticky place of actually where are the legalities if someone wants to start it. And anyway, it's tough.
Yes.
But one of the things which you mentioned, and I think is why fad diets seem so promising, or the things like the claims which people get sucked into, is that it can be quick. But the reality is, if you want to do this properly and you want to make a lasting change over your whole life, it's not a quick fix, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, like I said before, people might be used to maybe like a 2-pound weight loss per week when they cut out carbs, of course. Yes, there is that. And a lot of people will adhere to that forever. But when you cut out, especially like grains and starchy carbohydrates and things like that, your gut doesn't tend to like that. Your gut really loves fiber, really, really loves carbohydrates. Your brain really loves carbohydrates. And so when you go on these quick fixes, or you go on weight loss medication, in essence, you starve your brain. And that's when we see a lot of depression. That's when we see anxiety, difficulty thinking, foggy headedness, there's just so much suffering, unnecessary suffering, I think, that happens when you try one of these quick fixes. So yes, it's much slower. And I mean, I don't even mean to say it's much slower. I think 1 pound a week, or even a half a pound a week of weight loss, is actually quite healthy, very good for you. Once you start to see that you can do this without the suffering, that's when people really get into it for the long haul. They realize, like, I can listen to myself. I can have potato chips if I want to, but what is my body telling me when I'm eating them? And usually most people will say after about 5 or 6 that their tongue starts to get all with the salt, and you start to taste and feel the grease and things like that, when you are really, really tuning in. And when you're really tuning into your body, and you notice after you've had something, with, lots of veggies and lots of fiber and whole grains and, lean proteins, plant-based proteins especially, people are energized, and they're actually feeling really good, and they're feeling really healthy and happy. And, essentially what you're doing is you're giving your body the ingredients it needs to energize itself and to function well. So it's really just about their willingness to try the approach. And once they see that it's so good, then they usually will stick with it.
And can I get your take on how you manage things like eating out, birthdays, celebrations? Because, so I'll tell you my approach. Tell me if you think similarly, if you think differently. I tend to tell people that no food is restricted. Someone can still have cake. They can still have anything, but it's about understanding context and moderation. But I suspect you're taking it, and the nuances that you have and the insight is kind of way more. So I would love to hear from your point of view how you approach this with clients, and what sort of advice you would give. And for anyone listening, how they might be able to approach things like birthdays and occasions.
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm with you 100% in that I am of the firm belief that no food should be off limits. No food. And that's a really tough thing for people. They're like, what? What do you mean? I can have permission to have whatever I want? And it is true. When you actually say something is forbidden, off limits, birthday cake, whatever's at the birthday party, whatever's at the restaurant, you cannot have. Basically, what you're doing is you're creating a psychological craving for whatever is taboo, whatever is off limits. And so what I tend to see happen when you have that mentality is that you are more prone to binging. The moment that you allow yourself this off limits food is when, you really go to town on it. If you have the philosophy, I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, it actually takes away that taboo status of that food. It makes food more neutral. And I think it's really important. That's really where the mindfulness piece comes in. I want people to understand that they can have an open-hearted, non-judgmental awareness of their body and their food. And that is mindfulness and mindful eating. And when you do that, and you allow yourself the food, say it's something you really enjoy, like birthday cake, you're going to take more time with it, as opposed to just, shamefully, shoveling it down or denying yourself. You'll take time with it. And when you take time with that type of food, your body tells you when it's time to stop. And that's what is really key, is if they can go out to restaurants, if they can go to these parties, if they can go anywhere and have food be, on the table for them, but they're listening and they're tuning into their body, the more they do this, the more they actually crave things in the kind of healthier arena. I'm not going to say good, just in the more helpful arena. And then when they actually have those kind of forbidden foods, they enjoy them, but they usually will not go overboard on them. And this is the primary way I've actually helped people stop binge eating. I've actually opened up those possibilities for them. And that actually reduces binging.
Is it always as, I say simple is not really the right word, but I don't have a better one right now, but as simple as that, in the, so you talk about having this open relationship, saying you can have whatever you want whenever you want. I presume there are times when people overeat, or they say, okay, I can have as much birthday cake, and they go to town on it. How do you manage that with them? Because again, I know a lot of our listeners will have that difficulty, and call it whatever you want. They will feel they've had a kind of slip up, they've fallen off the wagon, and everything feels pretty rubbish. How do you manage those scenarios?
Right. Well, it's interesting that you said fallen off the wagon. So it's the question of what is actually the wagon? Is the wagon a restrictive diet that you fall off of? And that is the most common thing in the world. Yes, of course. Most people fall off the wagon. That's why I want to get rid of the wagon.
Right.
And I think when people get rid of the wagon and they understand that they can tune into themselves and they do not have to diet, they don't usually go. So it's actually, yes, it is simple. It's not necessarily easy because we have to understand what are the emotional reasons or the mindless reasons that we might go and just, consume food either mindlessly or emotionally. And usually those are negative emotions. They can be positive too. They can be, kind of that joyous feasting at the holidays kind of thing. But usually it's fueled by something negative. You had somebody make a comment to you. Actually, weight shaming or any kind of fat shaming will tend to make people go home and binge eat and eat more. So if they're experiencing this kind of discrimination out in the world, or they've had something really bad happen to them, say at work or at home, and they have been kind of conditioned to eat emotionally, that's the kind of thing that they're going to have to grapple against. What do they do when they have a negative emotion when they used to eat before? I do this with my clients all of the time. Well, there's a lot of other things that you can do besides emotionally eat if you're feeling bad. And part of that is coming to therapy with me, or it might be journaling, or it might be talking to their best friend. There's so many things that people can do as, the replacement behavior essentially for binging and overeating. And then I also think it's so important that we develop a level of grace and self-compassion for, our behaviors. If we do, go and have a binge eating episode, the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up for that. The best thing that you can do is learn from it. Well, what was going on with me? When we increase that self-awareness and we ask ourselves, why did that trigger me? Why did that hurt my feelings? And we learn how to work through that in a non-nutritionally, motivated manner, we actually then face our problems. Oftentimes when we're overeating, mindless eating, comfort eating, we're actually shielding ourselves from that. We're dissociating from our problems. But if you face your problem, you don't tend to use that as a coping mechanism anymore.
Amazing. And I think you kind of answered my question there as well. My follow-on is, if our metaphorical wagon was not a restrictive diet, it was actually a reasonably balanced diet, but the wagon was weight loss, if that was their goal, but they overate and then felt guilty, ashamed. I presume that is then those things which you mentioned afterwards, kind of trying to understand why they did it, what they can learn from it. So it's the same approach in how you manage that, because sure, you might have, but actually how can you stop that? And there's that bigger picture context of, if we're talking months here rather than, a week or two of weight loss or dieting, when you zoom out, it's insignificant, but actually the learning experiences you can have are way more important.
Exactly. It's, one, 3 slices of cake, let's say you did 3 slices of cake. If you really look at that, is not going to affect you and make you, a lot of people think like the second I eat a brownie, I'm going to gain a pound. And it is just not true. It is dependent on all sorts of other factors. How much exercise did you have in the day? How active were you? What was the other food you ate? What were the total, what's the total amount that you ate? And so I like to teach people that they can give themselves grace while they are learning about why they might have done that. Why did they go to have 3 pieces of cake when one or even a half a slice might have satisfied them before? And when they can really, for example, like a client of mine, whenever he's stressed, really stressed, say it's a sudden life event, will go straight to eating and consuming lots and lots of sweets, right? That's been the go-to mechanism. And we discovered that that's how he was kind of placated as a child. That's what he was given as a child as a way to calm himself down. So we've used that information to then find other ways that he can calm himself down when a stressful event occurs. And usually when you see this, like people who do tend to do this and have this as a behavior, they don't like it. They don't like that behavior. They feel very guilty, very shameful when they do engage in that, and they usually want to change that behavior. And so it's about being receptive to changing that behavior and being aware of it when it happens.
So good. There's so much helpful information in there, and it just makes it really clear that it's not just a kind of, there's so much to it. And as we mentioned at the start, people are influenced by diet culture and it permeates. But actually, if you really want to do it successfully, there is a lot to think about. And that's not to kind of make it seem scary or daunting, but if you want to do this for the long term, if you want to make these lasting behaviors, then it does take some work. But actually, the benefits, and like you mentioned, when people really start to understand that they can do it well and get joy with it, that's kind of transformative, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. When they realize that they have all food choices open to them, and they have healthy and productive ways to deal with negative emotions, and they're actually changing old, incorrect, ingrained beliefs about themselves, when they actually realize that they've been thinking this way for years, but it is actually not true, not factually true, then they really get on board with that. They realize that they're whole and beautiful people as they are, and they can continue to evolve and grow. But it's not about denying who you are. It's about embracing more and more of who you are. And I think, from a mental health perspective alone, that is so beautiful. That is why I wish my hope is to create a revolution against diet culture, because if everyone can feel this way, it's absolute freedom. The way that I've seen my clients change, the way I've changed myself, it's freedom. And it brings joy back into eating. And that's really what we're supposed to feel when we're eating. It's that beautiful sensory pleasure that comes from food. And when we allow it for ourselves rather than deny it, that's actually how we change and how we can lose weight. So it's absolutely against everything that is diet culture. And I love that.
I was going to ask you what your one key takeaway was going to be if you wanted to tell people about the relationship between diet, mindset, and long-term health. But honestly, I think that is the perfect place to end, because that really sums up the ethos of it and the potential benefits. So thank you. That was very eloquently put. So
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tovar, for your time. Where can people find out more information about you?
Oh, wonderful. Well, I have 2 websites. My practice website is drsupatratovar.com, and that's DrSupatratovar.com. That's where they can find out if they can work with me. And as a psychologist, I am licensed in 3 states, soon to be 4 states. But if you're interested in the course, you can go to anew-insight.com. It's anew-insight.com. And that's where you can access the course. That's where you can find out more about the book. The book is released on September 9th, and you can find that on Amazon very easily. All you have to do is just type that into the search bar, and you'll be able to purchase that soon. There's going to be hardcover, softcover, the ebook, and an audiobook as well.
Fantastic. And for anyone listening, we'll put the links to those things in the show notes so you can check them out there as well. So Dr. Tovar, thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. I just really hope that, your listeners hear this and are inspired that there is a different way that they can achieve their healthiest self. And it doesn't have to be through pain and deprivation. It can be through healing. It can be through incorporating these beautiful mantras into your life and incorporating mindful eating. And really, like, when you do this, the through line is happiness and joy and feeling comfortable and confident in yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.